Emily London is one of those women that when you're in her presence, you just feel more relaxed, more centered. Emily is a luxury portrait photographer based in Utah. She's also one of Sue Bryce's original mentors. She has a line of digital products for photographers, and she's also a very accomplished educator. Her latest course is called The Dom Photographer. She talks about the mindset and the energy when building a luxury based business, the energy that you need to connect with clients in a certain way, and providing a service that goes above and beyond in every regard. In this, we talk about meditation and breath work, polyvagal theory, nervous system regulation, Emily's time spent in Costa Rica exploring the art and practice of Tantra. We talk about vulnerability, so much more. So, why don't we get started right now with my guest, Emily London?
I love that we get to have a conversation that's recorded. This is like such a culmination of so many conversations you and I have had where I've been like, I want you to record our conversations.
How many times have we said that over the past year anyway?
Yeah, and it really strikes me that when we were having our conversations the most, I was also in a lot of fear storms in that season. And it's been some months where I've actually been in a really solid space. I've been in a really supportive relationship container, and it's been bringing me through this like fortification process. My stress levels are decreasing and stabilizing. My relationships with my teenagers are calming down and getting, my son is coming out of his teen rebellion stage. My daughter's just arriving into it. So we'll see how I'm trying to be strong, like prepared, because I love her. And I know that that's part of the process of going through like the whole shift of emotionality of this body. And so I feel very much more equipped to help her now that I've gone through all of the last 4 years of self-discovery and travel and individuation that I've gone through. And I'm also like a little terrified and preparing myself like for war.
Okay, so we've set the stage that there is a course coming that you're very afraid of recording, that you've got some fear wrapped up in. Hi, Emily. It's nice to see you.
I love you, Matt. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I like it, like we said a second ago. I'm really happy we're getting the chance to do this. I want to talk all about the Dom photographer
Cool.
as much as you want to. I thought, the Dom photo, I've been watching you build this over probably the better part of a year of conceptualizing kind of where you wanted to go with education, how you wanted to teach your own thing and envelop all of the pieces of your personality and integrate those parts of you that are super important into your teaching. So I've watched this build over the past year, and it's been really, really cool. Now that you've been able to launch it, how does it feel to finally have this out in the wild after, months and months and months and months of incrementally building it?
Well, that's an interesting question. It feels like I'm just starting. And it frankly, like even this course never felt like a pinnacle course or anything. For me, I'm very clear my vision is aiming towards this masculine, feminine, inner masculine and feminine harmonizing and teaching people how to have that ability to bring their inner harmony into their outer experiences is more what's calling to me. And it's been really cool in the last 4 years of like deep devotion to this work to reflect in hindsight on my work in photography and the nature of holding space and bringing somebody into themselves, into places of yourself that you've discovered and made peace with and learned to activate and magnify. And this person sees this in you and your work.
Mm.
That's why they want to be photographed by you. They want that energetic imprint,
Mm.
right? And also they want that permission, that safety that they're allowed to go there. So I had a lot in my backstory, my youth,
Mhm.
about being a show off. Like I was definitely that kid. I was like always, of course, like
No.
trying to be trying to be in front of the room. And, like I personally went through challenges with people who were really repelled by that and really like offended that I existed that way and made sure, like, and it's like amazing. I feel this movement of this little child. It's like a second grader who had this experience, but that second grader so wanted to be safe, right, from the judgments of others. And so then the third grader or fourth grader that's tougher now protects and builds this wall. And I learned over time that I got very fortified and capable of presenting like a mask.
Yeah.
And I learned in my studies that they call this posturing, and it's a form of protection
Mhm.
when somebody doesn't feel safe, when the
Mhm.
system goes into fight or flight, cueing danger.
Mhm.
We can have multiple characters show up in different ways in those moments that kind of like take over our body. And like you can see in the moment for me crying, the character that shows up is the second grader.
Right. Right.
And in subsequent moments when I've been, given some online trolling or whatever, I had more fortitude and more capacity to take it and more ability to like not take it on as part of myself. Like
Right.
I'm not that second grader and I'm tougher and I can guard her and she's safe. I'm holding her sacred from that shit because
Right.
I'm holding the boundaries internally in my mind that I'm no longer making somebody else's parameters for my behavior necessary for me to hold myself sacred. I'm not meant to cage myself in order to keep myself safe.
In the way that you explain this in The Dom Photographer, you've got this gorgeous graphic of dignity versus humility, right? And on one side, you've got the posturing. On the other side, you've got overwhelm. And it's this beautiful rainbow spectrum. And I will never put words in your mouth, but the way that I understand it is you can swing from far extreme from one end to the other, and you can either be in perfect humility, perfect dignity, or you can be somewhere in the middle and have this balance, which is where you kind of strive to be. But that pendulum is always in motion, where you're always going to be moving back and forth between this posturing and defensiveness and then being much more positive and available. Am I getting this right? So explain that to me.
Sure. So when we're talking about the extreme edges of this spectrum, we're talking about nervous system dysregulation. So we're
Right.
talking about fight or flight. So the feeling of unsafety. So whenever the feeling of unsafety arises for somebody, that's when they're likely to tip out of this middle range of the spectrum you just described, the healthy middle range where we're available for connection, where we have a beautiful balance in our dignity and in our humility and our curiosity and openness to other people, as well as in our ability to hold our own frame, to have ourself, to have our back, to know I'm a cool person, even if you think I'm a show off. That's your story. What a story for you to carry. I have compassion for that story you're holding because I wore that story for a little minute after I was told to wear it. And I would have my own quality of despising other people who were taking up too much space and perceiving them as hogging the airtime of the room or something, right? Especially like in group settings. I remember actually having in Costa Rica arriving and seeing this one woman dynamically telling a story at dinner, filling the space and being highly triggered in the corner, even though everybody else seemed quite entertained, but feeling like, who does she think she is taking up all this space in this group conversation? And what I realized when I observed myself later was I deeply wanted to be able to have permission to tell my own stories in the space,
Mhm.
but I was holding myself back to not be a show off or to not be dominating the space.
Right.
And so my anger was something I was also directing inwardly and using as a cage, right? That's the jailer, the warrior archetype within ourself can be in balance as a guardian and protector and advocate. And when we get triggered in fight or flight, it can get inflamed. And the challenge is certain personalities, that inflammation causes anger and aggression. And that's where we see dignity, posturing, and that side of the spectrum. I'm there. That tends to be me. I grew up in a really ferocious household, and so I had the ability to hold my ground. But the other side of the spectrum is collapse, and that's when our inner warrior is turning the blame inward. And that's when it becomes the cage. And shame is blame cast inward. And when we tip that far, that other direction, we collapse.
I'm all on that side. I live in that cage, the collapse cage, right? Like that's so comfy for me to stay in this place of hiding and overwhelm and depression and just basically shutting down, you know? And when I was doing a lot of therapy, I had just started learning about the polyvagal theory, which you reference in this as well. And for those that don't know, polyvagal theory is basically centered around the vagus nerve, which is kind of like this longest nerve that you have in your body. And it runs between the brain and the gut and the heart. And it's kind of like this ancient nerve that you have, but it contributes to why people say, you know, the gut has its own brain. Like this plays into that. But essentially, polyvagal theory is you've got your three states. You've got your safe and secure state. You've got your fight state, fight or flight state. And then you've got the freeze state, right? And freeze is known as dorsal vagal complex, and the safety is ventral vagal complex. So you've got ventral vagal, dorsal vagal, and then you've kind of got the middle, which is your sympathetic nervous system and everything in there. When I first started hearing about the polyvagal theory and understanding where I was spending most of my time, understanding fight or flight or freeze or safety, I realized that I had been living in this dorsal vagal state. I was really in this sense of collapse, of shutting down, of shutting out, basically full on self protection. It's safer to be wrapped up in a cage and shut down than it is to deal with all of the other things that are happening in my life. And this is like, you know, the childhood stuff, the trauma, the pressures, and not knowing how to deal, which is manifested in a billion different ways. Perfectionism and ADHD and, you know, the inability to love and like all these things, right? So really struck me that you took this approach to photography, right? And not so much an approach to photography, but bringing this type of conversation into education in photography about the complex nature of the relationship between the subject and the photographer, and how you basically have to have your house in order to project the energy that these folks are coming to you for, because that's what they see anyway.
Let's clarify because yes, I agree with what you're saying, especially when it comes to me as my nature. Um, Not every photographer is attractive because they have their house in order. I think that there are people who are attractive because of their chaos and because of their wildness,
100%. Yeah.
right? So, so attractiveness is obviously it's a ephemeral thing that's like, everybody's going to be attracted to different people in different moments in their life, and there's some like cosmic, my belief is that there's something organizing this universe that causes all of these collisions of people. And every time I collide with a new person, I really perceive it as like some divine like gift for myself or this person to extract something from and to nourish each other with. And to that, for me, I have such a belief in the connectivity of us, right, as of humans. And as I've been studying in photography or in after photography, post photography, Tantra study, I really started getting to learn about the quality of co regulation. And I've also been very interested in studying a lot power dynamics. I got married when I was 18 years old to a 25-year-old man. A span from 18 to 25 is quite a difference in power. But not only the age, it was more actually, I wanted the relationship more. I wanted him so bad, like for anything. And I knew I wanted it more. So he had more power just because of that. It's not necessarily like an overpowering person taking advantage of their power. It was more of a, I will do anything to keep this contained. And so for the nature of the fact that I carried myself in that role for about 7 years of that marriage, and then I really became resistant and wanted a divorce. And we didn't get divorced until 8 years later. The journey of those 8 years was actually more or less my photography journey. It was right at that moment I discovered Sue Bryce, because I told my husband for the first time, like, I want to discover myself. What interests me? You went to college. I stayed home with our kids and started a business. Business is doing well. You're graduated. I want to go educate myself. And I went online and found Sue Bryce. And I was a high school dropout who had not left the house for like 7 years because I was raising kids and having an online business selling stickers on the internet. So I was very disempowered. And I was given this new vocabulary and new permissions for guarding and holding my energy sacred. And, you know, I was 26 when I started my photography career. I would not have called myself a dom, or of course I wasn't. I was a kid. In some ways, I still see myself as a kid. I'm not necessarily trying to say like I'm the dom photographer in all moments. I don't want to wear that mantle all the time. Thank you. I can hold it. It's a frame I can step into because I know how to access my dignity. And Sue Bryson, the opportunity to grow into the photography, it was the language that gave me access to my dignity. And it came in stages.
When you start talking to some of your students or mentees, or people at a conference or wherever you might be, do you find that there are similar threads in a lot of people's stories of disempowerment, or are folks just looking for something new? Like, what's your take when people come to you? That what are they searching for?
What a question. I feel like I meet so many people that the variety of where people are at in their journey is so across the board.
Sure.
People come to me for mentoring really when they're like, I haven't been making money. I raised my prices. I believe in my prices, but like nobody else does. So is it my area? I just have everything set up, and I'm now at that point where I have to make this work or I have to stop. So I've hired, that's what they come to me for, to tell me, am I good enough?
Right.
So they're coming for validation in that moment, and that's fair. And going to a professional for validation is wise.
Sure.
And then they're also wanting to learn the next skill set that brings them into the enticement. Nobody owes you $3,000 for your images. You're not entitled to their $3,000.
Right.
It's up to you to make them so desirous that they're like, okay, that felt like $3,000 worthy of desire to have this. So attractiveness, right, is a quality that generates desire. As much as my work, as much as my professionalism, my ability to be like interested in other people made me really attractive. My ability to be safe for people made me really attractive. My warmth and capacity to actually like feel comfortable at networking events, so I wasn't so tense that I couldn't like be aware of the fact that everyone else around me is also so tense that they just want somebody else to come say hi to them first, because I'm in so much my own story that I'm just shut down and can't. So after you go to a few networking events, I pushed myself through that. Then I was the person who was like comfortable enough to be, here, come to the room. Let me introduce you to your first person. And just growing into that easefulness was attractive. And I didn't start there. I earned it over time. My enthusiasm was the best thing in the beginning that brought people in. That was attractive.
One of the things that I heard in you messaging that kept getting repeated over and over, or at least it was a subtext that kept getting repeated over and over, was about setting this very safe environment for people. Your job as a professional is to understand your subject, is to connect with them and to be able to meet them where they're at, and be able to create this safe space, to be this trusted person. I love the fact that there was always this emphasis on safety and honor and respect, because I think a lot of times artists of any discipline, we make it about us. It's about me. I want to get the picture. I want to have the nice portfolio. I want to be admired by other photographers. I want to do this. I want to do it's comparison, comparison, comparison. We sometimes forget, I've been guilty of it, that the person in front of the camera is an actual person, is a human, and they have desires and wants and needs, and I have to stay in tune to that all the time to make sure that I'm delivering the best product possible, the best experience possible, the most safe environment possible.
Mm.
I love the fact that you talk about that safety and creating a space that is perfect for the person in front of you, but knowing that that space that you create will probably be different for each person, but it's the intention with which you create that space that's common throughout.
I mean, yes, and it's your own energy that's going to always be common throughout, right? Like I'm not distorting myself to accommodate the others, right? Part of it is I have the intentionality that I'm holding whatever is real in the
Mm.
space for her and for me. And so in order for me as an artist to create my most real from the gut stuff, I have to have done a few things in the background first. It's like first I have to master the actual technique of the craft.
Sure.
My brain is still in the fear and the frazzle of the camera gear and stuff. That's challenging to navigate, holding all of my energy and being in this vibe, being the hostess too. So there's some pre-work, of course, and then there's also the pre-work of the if I want my truth to be safe in the space, but let's say, for example, I don't create safety for my truth in my other arenas of my life. For me, it's my probably everything. Honestly, I was very used to muting my personality and being very in the awareness of other and always like being whatever I was needed from the
Mm.
other for the other to be loved. This was my adaptation strategy. And I was very gifted at it. And so it made me actually very strong as a kind of a relational leader in that I almost like disappeared and became only this awareness that was magnifying this other person's presence
Mm.
and permissioning it from this space of just openness and appreciation. Like, wow, you're doing so good. This is exactly right. And so, of course, some of the pre work is also, I had to get to the stage where I had the practice of doing that for myself in front of the mirror when I'm working through my all these like awkward poses that I'm trying to teach myself for photography, and I'm making it a safe space. And even if there's like a weird one, I'm like, oh wow, that looks so weird. Instead of being like, oh, I'm terrible at this. It's like, what would make that look good? And
Right.
so cultivating the ability to not turn my irritation or my judge's ability to perceive that something is not what I want, not make it become a story that then becomes all of the things that make me get fear, that make me unable to create, because I know that fear is the antithesis of creation. And so I had to have made that like my habit state for me, because now I'm in the studio. I'm feeling tension in my body. But I've actually, since this time has evolved, now I actually have a lot of techniques that I know how to ground myself, how to like get comfortable and land in my body. Oh, if I just actually breathe a few deep breaths, the stage fright will chill. I know it. It's part of every photo shoot. I'm going to have a few crazy, intense, like heart racing, fast breathing moments when the shoot first begins. And my client is there too. And I'm watching her there. She's in it. She's never been in it before, but I've been in it 50 times, 100 times, 200 times, right? So it makes sense that I'm the leader who's going to tell her, this is actually how it's going to go. Like, I got you. We're safe. Deep breaths. Slow down my breathing. Notice how even my voice now just shifted. I had like a pinch in my range, which is tension and being in the head, right? And when you go into your breath, it's a moment to bring you into your body, into your truth, your actual emotions, not your analysis and all of the very distracting thoughts that you might have about that or about anything else. And being able to bring that into the space. My truth as an artist and creator is where my timing is where my instincts are, is where like the most effortless, most interesting images come, is when I'm like so safe to just try anything. Right. Even if she thinks it's weird, we're gonna like not make it weird because right. I'm in play mode and I'm setting the tone of play mode.
And you've also built this modicum of trust with them, right? So they're coming along for the ride because they trust the energy that you have and that they're safe and that playtime is playtime and it's going to be fine no matter what they may be fighting internally. There's this external connection to you which can help them get past whatever their fears or inhibitions or blocks might be. You had said a few minutes ago about the breath work, breathing in, breathing out, letting that out, right? And just exactly. All the listeners are loving that in the car right now. Just
We could do better for them. We could make it work for them.
We could.
That'll be a different recording, ladies.
Yeah, totally different recording.
I'll make it happen.
You write it, I'll record it. How's that sound?
Okay.
So you have breath work in there about doing breathing exercises and modern photography education courses. I'm not seeing a lot of that. So I was super stoked when I'm watching this video. Then suddenly I'm sitting there with you and I'm breathing and I'm letting things out and it's and
you did it with me. That's awesome.
I was so doing it with you. And it was really interesting how that little bit of presence, keeping yourself present, tuning everything else out, how much falls away. And for someone with a neurospicy brain like mine, my brain is going all the time. And to be able to stay present and just center and hold space for myself, it was wonderful to be reminded of that. I kind of went by my elbow to get to my ass on that point, but it was really just the breath work piece I hadn't seen before. And I really appreciated you including that because it is such an important thing for us to be able to regulate our own nervous system.
Yeah, and honestly, I came from a childhood where I was incredibly dysregulated. And I married a person who had similar dysregulation, different strategy or approach. So my strategy was to fight, and my former husband's strategy was to avoid conflict at all costs. And so he trained me over time to restrain my fight impulse a little bit, kind of just with his safety, frankly. He created more safety for me and it soothed my nervous system. And so the breath work that I include, it really came about after my divorce. The loss of this partnership, it was a very big disruption in my feeling of safety. And to learn how to anchor myself was a new experience that I Tantra was a big part of how I called upon these practices to resource myself. And I really brought them to my photography career at the end of it. I had created all of this stuff with the breathing techniques before the shortened one that I taught about, that I had been using for the photography career, because I actually needed that before shoots to like actually just not be in so much terror, like my heart
Sure.
out out of control, that I would feel like, oh no, I can't control my body, and that would accelerate my fear, right? So I actually had a lot of like problems with panic and dysregulation as a photographer. The first time I got on Creative Live, I was in the back, like holding my breath and like going through all of these techniques, just trying to survive it and not cry. And after the divorce, it was my chance to realize I still had a real template in my system, this
Mhm.
child from a very
Mhm.
inflamed childhood that hadn't been addressed. And I had been given safety and peace, but not skills and tools for how to be this way on my own.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Sure. Absolutely. Makes sense.
So the breath work and everything was actually what I was able to infuse and gift myself.
Mm.
I was trying to be the best
Mhm.
photographer, mentor, Sue Bryce person, whatever, perfectionistic. That cage became such an additional stress load to my system that I I I had to retire from photography after my divorce, like in this way that was, I have so much of my creativity needs have to get diverted to this baby girl, this inflamed child in me who needs to learn how to navigate reality and find
Mm.
safety within myself. And I had to learn how to harmonize my masculinity and my femininity. In my marriage, I started overly feminine from the position of, I'll do anything to keep you, and being very teachable and submissive. Then pendulum swung to the opposite side. Sue Bryce discovers, comes into my life. I've got an empowerment and a business. And so I swing over hyper masculine. You wouldn't know by looking at the beautiful feminine quality of the work.
Right.
And getting divorced, I switched over again, hyper feminine, to my
Mhm.
chaotic, inflamed child and my very suppressed sexuality, and needing to address those aspects of me and bring them into harmony with a new version of a masculine. That pendulum is always kind of finding its balance point, right? And so then discovering a version of the masculine within me in a beautiful way, influenced by my former husband, influenced by Sue Bryce, right? I have these aspects of me that I can infuse. And also, I've learned some structures and practices that really hold me and give me the ability to hold myself in that masculine frame, and the permission for my chaotic, inflamed, wild child, artist, lover, whatever, all of it. I love it all. You'll
Mm.
see me cry a lot. It's interesting to me too.
No, I've never seen you cry, not once, not ever. There's never been a tear in any of the conversations we've had. There's obviously this period in between where you started to learn photography from Sue, gain that empowerment, between your marriage ending, starting to really work out on your own and establish a life, a solitary life for the moment to get in touch with every part of you. Was it in Costa Rica that you had a wow moment that opened you up? Was there a marked moment down there where things clicked with how you needed to see yourself emotionally? And were you able to find that balance? Was it through dance therapy? Was it through Tantra? What did you find when you moved to the very, very humid jungle?
Well, let me backtrack and say, like, for me, it was 15 years and it originated
Mm,
at 18. It wasn't
mm,
just a relationship that ended, it was my family
yeah.
completely. So it was like this, like, okay, I chose to end something kind of beautiful
Yeah.
because I felt that there was potential for something really, truly magnificent. And I had to forgive the part of myself that knew that and wanted that and that initiated the divorce. The part of me that wanted to stay safe and taken care of really was pissed, pissed, and inflamed. I also had other aspects of me that were incredibly inflamed, right? This childhood theme carried into my marriage with my sexual relationship with my partner. And I'm bringing that up because that's important when you realize why I pursued Tantra. In my dynamic, my partner was a loving guy. He was not like abusive or trying to take advantage in ways he shouldn't. He was always trying to honor my needs or whatever, but he was like, it was something that we were never able to figure it out.
Sure.
We started off on the wrong foot. We didn't have the communication skills to get onto the right foot. And then we just kind of built a lot of pain and resentment until we had to end up with nothing. So that huge disruption was like starting over as an orphan. That was when I went into my dark night of the soul and into my great realizations about my past and about my future. I saw for myself a tantric healing and intimacy coach from my bedroom in my house in Utah. I, at the season after my divorce, had just a mattress on the floor, and it became this cocoon space for a year. I didn't go anywhere else. I didn't date. I dated, but I wasn't dating for partnership. I wasn't trying to find a man to be my man. I was exploring my sexuality, really, and continuing to injure myself by not setting boundaries the same exact way I did in my marriage. And the same reason I ended my marriage was this thing like, you did this, you can't respect my boundaries, so we can't stay together. And then to discover I'm still doing the thing that's causing this situation meant I was the one. Well, it was both of us, of course. Every dynamic is both people, but it's helpful for me to take the responsibility because then I can do something with it. So for me to say, I was the one who didn't know how to speak my needs, boundaries, and desires. And I sat in that cocoon. I hired my tantric coach from that space and nourished myself with what were my needs, boundaries, and desires, actually. And I started really giving myself permission to feel my needs, boundaries, and desires. And I started really desiring to go back to being warm. So, just some backstory: I was raised in the Philippines. My parents got divorced when I was 7, and when we left the Philippines when I was 7, we went to Utah in the middle of the winter in December, and I have struggled with winter ever since. And winter was coming up, and I suddenly looked at my beautiful house on this mansion, like this magnificent hillside with this beautiful view, and I just realized, like, I'm selling the house. Present tense. Got on the phone and texted my mom, who's a real estate agent, and said, I need you to list the house. What do we do to get started? It was that season of time when I was really giving myself space just to be myself, only myself for a bit, to not have to make myself available to meet the needs of other people for a minute. My kids' needs were taken care of. You know, it was finally giving myself permission to only care about that for a second. What are my needs, boundaries, and desires? Because I was so distracted by the external people in my field, my children, my husband, my clients, that I wasn't attuning to my own needs and boundaries and desires. And then, like, during that season after my divorce, I became an incredibly selfish friend for a little while, only able to see myself and talk about I had to go there. And I'm really grateful that I did. I feel a little sorry to my friendships that I took up all that space for a while. When I started getting clear on what my desires were, they were pointing me back to the warmth of Costa Rica. Costa Rica was easier than the Philippines. I'm not going back to the Philippines. it wasn't the country itself that I was like in love with as a child. You know, as a child, all you remember is the backyard and the swimming
Sure.
pool and the warmth. And whenever I went outside, people were excited to see a blonde kid. And so I got to kind of live this world where I got to be beautiful and special everywhere I went. I loved it. And I get to experience that in Costa Rica to some degree. It was this child part of me so desiring to go back. I wasn't done, you know? And I was honoring that sweet part of me that wasn't done. Dancing in the backyard, the swimming pool, you know? That first step of giving myself permission to sell the house and go to Costa Rica. And I was like, I discovered this incredible dance video. And when I saw it on my way to Costa Rica, I was like, okay, after Costa Rica, the next thing I'm going to do is learn that style of dance. And then when I was in Costa Rica, I was connected to a woman who teaches that style of dance at the same retreat center that I was at. It's a very unique style of dance called Brazilian Zouk, very into the masculine and feminine energy dynamics. You know, I kind of feel like that's the nature of this guiding universe that wants us to be given all of the experiences we desire. It's my perspective. And so I was led to my adventures and to, wow, to a dance teacher who was teaching not just Zouk, which, for the record, what I loved about Zouk was seeing the woman in surrender and thinking, wow, I want to access that. And the teacher that I had was like, I only teach liquid lead and follow, where we learn both how to lead and follow. And the game is we're having a conversation that's a mutual dialogue. It's not somebody telling somebody else how to move. And so she actually kind of flipped this very traditional gender rolled dance to a different game. And it's really fun to play in the game where the masculine and feminine energy dynamics shift. The surrender of being the listener is very delicious. I enjoy that and prefer it, frankly. But the leadership and capacity to mentally formulate the structure of a movement of a dance is also a really cool thing to step into and be able to have the capacity to do. To answer your question, this specific woman that the universe aligned me with brought me to the exact correct lesson for me, which was that I didn't actually have to learn to simply surrender, that wasn't something that would ever have to be an expectation from me again. And yet I could absolutely still play and dance in surrender. I just get to have both. And to learn it through the form of dance means she didn't only teach it to me conceptually, she taught it to my body. So now my body knows. So my experiences in sex have absolutely shifted since that training, because now I play with both.
How is the young Emily faring? The little girl you nurture, how's she faring?
I have a much better relationship with her now, child Emily, because I have commitments to take care of her better.
Sure.
I paid attention to what my needs are. Like, you know, I need to feel safe. I need to feel joy and beauty and connection, and I prioritize them. And I prioritize my need for softness and crying.
When you were in Costa Rica and we kept in touch and we were talking quite a bit while you were down there, and you were recording different courses at that time, and it wasn't the Dom photographer. It was a different set of coursework. Do you feel like all of that helped drive you more pointedly towards this course, towards the Dom photographer, and understanding the importance of your own energy and your own control of your own energy when in business as a photographer?
Honestly, this course came about because it kept getting requested. Like I kept having people request that I do a mentoring session with them, and they
Mhm.
always wanted to talk about this specific thing. They
Got
had
it.
seen me from Sue Bryce, the pre-consultation videos, and they were like,
Mhm.
"Oh, your process was amazing," and I'm done with that process. Right? I
Right.
retired. I'm like, my brain is done, and I kept not wanting to teach these, people who are coming to me for this knowledge. And eventually one woman convinced me to do it, to do a mentoring session with her, and then also like, you know what, if I'm re-energizing this, like putting my mind back around it all, for her, I'm going to do it for a course so that I can have this kind of retirement gift, out of
Sure.
photography. Like I said, I'll never not be a photographer. You'll always be a photographer once you've started that. But it, for me, is kind of a way of tying a bow
Yeah.
on the season of time that was my mm, delicious and beautiful Sue Bryce photography playground, right? And I am so grateful to have been given the opportunity in photography. Wow, to learn how to hold space with people who are putting me in this position and saying, "I trust you."
Yeah.
And that fortified me in learning that I could trust me too. I felt like women are so generous for each other. Like that they're gonna do their best to do whatever you're asking, and like even if you're giving them weird, requests, they'll try it. I mostly felt that from people, encouragement and trying, like let's make this art together. And it was, for me to be able to do photography was very healing to the unsocialized part of me that needed to learn how to be around people with proximity. It was very healing to the part of me who wanted to step into my leadership. It was very healing to learn how to set boundaries with clients, how to set prices, how to set standards for what I would expect, how to solve problems, and see the areas that I just was in resistance, and how could I solve this problem and create this solution. And a lot of the structures that are in the binder, which is the course you haven't seen yet, evolved because of
Mhm.
the support of the masculine that my ex-husband provided in this way of, not only him and of course Sue Bryce. Sue Bryce's education was at a lot of my foundation. And of course you would
Sure.
need to, I think, benefit most of all from my thing if you also were working with Sue Bryce's content. I
Great.
think that it's very symbiotic. But wow, to have been given that gift, right? To learn how to do this. And my ex-husband's infusion of his support in, hey, babe, we can't have emergencies all the time. Like, what's the solution?
Right.
Right? And like, okay, here's the solution. We're gonna have more preparation, and then we need like a buffer time, and then we have to add this in the schedule. And so that kind of structure that gets put into the flow of the binder it's everything that made me not want to do my job got put into this structure and frame so that I could just be a very happy floaty artist rather than thinking about all the business stuff and all of the other emails and conversations that I had to have with people back and forth, and waste of time. And I was able to hire somebody eventually, and she did all of my sales calls. I trained her on how to do that, and all of the ways that I trained her are in the binder, which is the accompaniment to the Dom photographer. It's the Dom's binder, right? So the binder is literally what we called it in my studio. That's just why I gave it that name. But that's what I used to train. It was the training manual for my team. So here are all of my systems so that you can now take care of me in my studio so that I can just show up and play and be an artist. And so that's like eventually, after 8 years as a photographer, what I constructed. I discovered Tantra, started weaving that work in my cocoon phase, then like closed shop, just moved away from all of this work that I had built, this incredible system, and devoted myself to this other arena. And I'm still very devoted to this other arena. The content that you talked about is still in creation, and I'm super excited about it. And also, it felt really good to have a way to honor that past life,
Right.
right? To be able to say, like, I'm so grateful for the the whole process of living it, of the processes that I got to create, and the aspects of me that got to come forth in that, and the me I got to become because of it. And the amazing thing is, Matt, when I pulled out this curriculum to teach into this course, I actually gave to myself then this incredible gift, which was, oh, this is the structure for my next business. It is the binder. It's just now with new emails, and it's my other. So it's actually a system that now is supporting me again in the frame of, all right, now I'm a high-end luxury coach that's helping people with intimacy and tantric healing. And so the process of connection and enticement and, invitation, and it's a journey, is not that different, honestly, from photography. And so to say, now I have this beautiful structure that's holding me again, and to be able to also give it back and complete this cycle with Sue felt really lovely. So that's how it ended up kind of intercepting my tantric, journey and path.
I think it's beautiful. I think all of those experiences have shaped you and what it is that you're sharing into something really special. This is why I'm never going to be your marketing or sales guy. From where I sit, this isn't for everyone, right? This isn't for everyone where it's just a Walmart version of start your photo business. What it is if you're ready, if you've done a little bit of the work ahead of time, if you're ready to have an open mind and approach your business a little bit differently, here's a methodology for you to explore. And not only along the way will you create wonderful space for your clients, but you'll be a little bit more in touch with yourself. I think one of the things you said in there a moment ago, and it ties into something you said in the video, and I was writing it down as you said it. Photography is a luxury item, and you've got to develop that luxury mindset. There's a different mindset that goes along with providing a luxurious service and the energy that accompanies that. And it feels like the Dom photographer really caters to developing that luxury mindset in all forms. For me, that's how I interpret luxury is safety and affirmation. It's not materialistic or this is the most expensive thing that I could have. Luxury to me is something much more emotionally based than physically based. So when you say that photography is a luxury item or trying to develop a luxury mindset, am I on point with that or am I misinterpreting what it is that you're teaching? Because I want to make sure that I'm getting what you're saying correct.
And I say that, what I'm referencing especially is I used to feel guilty receiving money for taking pictures. And there was a part of me who felt like I have, and this person has less. And I'm taking therefore from their very little or from the food from their table.
That's common for a lot of us to think. Yeah.
So there was this guilty part of me that felt I was stealing from people. And it was important for me to have this reframe that I'm providing something that's not a necessity. It is a luxury. And so it is not an obligation to provide it for the price of a necessity. I'm not a gas company. I I have very finite time. I'm a mom and I want to spend time with my kids. I'm a lover and I want to spend time with my sweetheart. And I am a multi-passionate student who is always learning. And I have time with each individual client and I want to be able to serve many. And in order for me to be able to do that, I have to price myself in a way that honors all of the aspects of me that I'm magnifying in my life. And I guess when I talk about, being a luxury photographer, there's also this quality of like, it's my luxury as the photographer. I get to be in the beautiful studio. I get to have a team supporting me. I get to be able to say, I want to be surrounded by beauty and delicious experiences, and I provide that with my clients, right? So the luxury was, it was like, yeah, an embodiment of, for myself, like I don't have to do this work if it makes me feel like a servant or if it makes me feel abused. Like there are aspects of me, like I talked about having an inflamed childhood.
Yeah.
So like there are aspects of me that my resistances sort of came from, like I'm going to get taken advantage of, or and rightly so, right? Because I wasn't very good at communicating boundaries when we first started. So at the beginning, what I had was anger or protection, or just, not getting in the fray. And, with coming into myself in photography, it was like, okay, I'm in the fray, but not like this, not like that, not like that. You can treat me like this. Like you can be on time to your appointments. Like you can show me that respect. Like I can just say it to you in a way that doesn't denote or indicate that I would assume you wouldn't at all. I don't have to make it a weird thing. We don't have to be in any kind of like negative energy when I read my contract to people and tell them about my policies about rescheduling and stuff. It can be a totally nice vibe.
Mhm.
And also the few people that like made didn't show up, no call, no showed, like made me angry and made me not want to keep being a photographer.
Sure. Absolutely.
And so it was that was the resistance. So I created a solution. So the solution was learning to have conversations, learning to state my boundaries clearly with precision and with respect, learning new communication skills, and a mastery of something beyond what I had before. Nobody owed me respect. It was my job to cultivate the ability to earn it.
Who is the Dom photographer for? Where are they at as a photographer? Beginner, experienced, journeyman,
Well,
searching, lost, spinning. Who's this for?
I absolutely think it's more for the photographer who's in a state of humility than one who is very, very like cultivated in their dignity. I think that the intentionality of the course is really permissioning for the people who would be more able to resonate with how I was when I started out, right? So I was young, I was insecure and unconfident and unsocialized. And I was given these resources. So the Sue Bryce coursework, which I recommend pursue those, sign up for that, right? Like that to me is like an entire system in a box, beautifully delivered, an exquisite masterpiece. And so I absolutely always directing people, if they have already had access to that education and been taking advantage of that, and particularly that order, I think would be really complimentary. If
Yeah.
they haven't discovered Sue Bryce yet, I think that my course might inspire their curiosity and have them pursue the Sue Bryce coursework, because I don't think that my course has the same foundational structure that her content does. She's like
Sure.
providing a business model.
Sure.
So what I'm providing for in the Dom photographer is mindset training.
Mm.
That is a 1.5 hour mindset training course. It was the mindset shifts that I have talked to so many other photographers who hired me for mentoring to help them get through. It was the common, consistent things like that, what I just described to you, guilt
Yeah.
at the idea I might be stealing mouths, food from the mouths of the children of the people I was photographing by charging money that like that. Just orienting to a different perspective of reality. I came from a framework that was uh, interesting in the yin yang of when I lived with my father, I had some wealth and privilege. And when I lived with my mother, I had a very feral, somewhat neglected existence and broke. And so I actually carry the imprint of a lot of poverty from my family line. Both of my
Mm.
parents came from broke. And so there's some scarcity in my nervous system. Yeah, the mindset shifts that I provide in that course came from my life. getting my mind around it. How can I ask somebody $1,200 minimum? How? Like, how can I even stomach it from a guilt perspective? So I had to start there. So that's a big part of the mindset stuff. Then there's also the how do I do it from the how do I tolerate the fear of the rejection and like hold myself okay and not like become a cold and hard and withdrawn like tense person in the corner after somebody says, whoa, that's too expensive. And I'm in my story in my head about how, it's like if I let myself go there, I'm not a very attractive, I'm not in the energy of like being enthusiastic and bringing you into the space. So there are a few things, right? It's mindset of some of those areas. The next course, the binder, that's the meat, Matt. That's the place I would love for you to go next. That's the one that actually goes into step by step each phase of the process, starting with the value of your offer. So really getting gifted and skilled at developing how to speak about the value of what you do from a position of actually feeling it too. Because I mean, you have to be turned on by your offer. If you're not turned on by your offer, why would I be turned on by your offer?
Looking at the Dom photographer, having gone through that first video, I love, love, love not only the marriage of the spiritual and emotional to what we do as a service provider. I love the fact that you're the one to bring it to the market. I love the fact that you are the one that is able to speak on this from a place not of academic study, but of learned and lived experience of uprooting your life over and over and over, making really fucking hard decisions over and over and over in the pursuit of exactly what it is that you want and makes your heart full. Seeing it come to fruition really is, for me, watching my friend build what they believe in is phenomenal. Where can people find you? And as we land this plane, what are some of the things that you'd like to say to anyone that's out there listening?
Ooh, where can people find me? Well, emilylondon.com is my tantric work. Emily London Portraits is going to get you to the Dom photographer. I'll end up putting the Dom photographer on the Tantra website as well. The Tantra website, though, we've got a course that's going to be launching the beginning of December, and excited to have another one going out in February, end of February. So there's some beauty on the way. As far as what I would want somebody listening out there to know, actually, I want to speak to you because you are my dear friend. And I want to thank you for your vulnerable, open, safe space that you give and for the space that you hold. I have always loved being in your orbit and appreciate so much your guardianship of a sort, feeling very held by you. And of course, we have our beautiful conversations that we were especially exploring when I was in Costa Rica. I've been back in Utah and been nose to the grindstone and have been able to come back to all of my connections. So it's beautiful to be able to come back to a chance to be in that container that you hold so beautifully. Especially this context does provide that, right? You and I have a little different rapport when we're together. That I love how professional you are. You made me feel very safe and feel very like taken care of and looked after, like in the sense that I felt like, oh, I like where you're going with this conversation. So it was a pleasure. And also, Matt, the next time we talk, I wanna do an interview on my podcast of you, where I get to ask the questions and lead the dance. How does that sound?
Absolutely.
Okay. Beautiful. Well, perhaps you can be one of my first podcast recording episodes. You can teach me some of your tricks you've learned in this game.
Thank you, Emily, for being here. I'm going to say goodbye. It was wonderful seeing you. I'm sure I'll catch up with you soon.
Okay, darling.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.